So the whispers finally found their way to you. Interesting how you ended up hearing a conversation you were never meant to be part of. Hello to you. The quiet force people underestimate, the calm surface hiding disruption, the contradiction so striking that someone with real influence suddenly felt threatened by your existence. You feel it, don't you? That shift in the atmosphere, a strange charge in the air, a tension in the way certain people try to say your name like it suddenly weighs more than it used to. Something happened, something unplanned, something they absolutely never signed off on. And now there's panic in rooms you've never been allowed to step into. Someone with a title bigger than their backbone, someone who hides behind credentials like armor, someone who thought they were untouchable, said your name in a room full of people who were not ready to hear it. And the moment they did, everything changed. They didn't toss your name into casual conversation. They spoke it with weight, with unease, with that subtle edge that shows up right before things begin to unravel. Let me spell it out, because you deserve to know exactly what happened. There was a meeting, not the performance kind where everyone pretends to care, but the kind where doors get locked and phones get dropped in the center of the table, the kind where people speak in fragments because the walls have long memories. And inside that room full of ladder climbers and backsteppers, your name hit the air and the temperature dropped. You weren't supposed to be discussed. You weren't on any agenda. You weren't even supposed to register in their world. Yet suddenly you became the only topic that mattered because someone with far more authority than anyone expected decided you were now their concern. They tried to classify you, reduce you to data points, explain you using their neat little frameworks, file you under manageable or contained or whatever sterile language they use to disguise the fact that they treat people like variables. But here's where it gets poetic. Nothing worked. Every explanation fell apart. Every attempt to minimize you made you seem more significant. Every label they tried to pin on you only highlighted how uncontrollable you really are. You became the glitch they couldn't erase, the error they couldn't debug, the variable their models couldn't account for. By the time the room fell silent, every person there realized, with that specific kind of dread, that they had massively underestimated you. Your name wasn't just mentioned. It was seared into their awareness like a warning they'll never shake off. And do you know what it really means when someone that high up, someone who usually deals with global-scale decisions, pauses their day to talk about you? It means you broke through. It means you shattered the ceiling they were sure you'd never reach. It means you did something so disruptive it climbed the entire chain of command, landing in front of someone who isn't used to being surprised, let alone concerned. Yet there they were, saying your name with hands that didn't seem as steady as before. You were never supposed to climb that high. You weren't supposed to matter at that level. You were meant to stay a number in someone's system, forgettable, replaceable. And yet somehow, you became the anomaly that broke their structure. Now they're scrambling. Because when someone with that much power brings up someone like you, that's not a discussion. That's a declaration of war. They've finally realized they're losing control. They sent their sharpest minds to study you, predict you, map out your next move. And every single one returned empty-handed, rattled, borderline unstable, muttering about how none of the usual patterns apply to you, how every psychological model collapses when you're involved, how you operate on a frequency they don't even have the tools to detect. You weren't just hard to read, you were uncontainable. And that uncontainability climbed the hierarchy until it reached someone who believed nothing could surprise them. Someone convinced they had human behavior mastered, someone who's about to learn that people like you don't fit inside the definitions they memorized. Some individuals are evolution happening in real time, and you are precisely that kind of dangerous anomaly. Now let's get into how all of this actually happened, because it didn't come out of nowhere. This moment was built over years. They've been tracking you, compiling files, taking notes, analyzing your choices like they were studying an experiment they thought they'd eventually decode. Every move you made was logged. Every decision got dissected. Every time you went left when their charts predicted you'd go right, someone scribbled another frustrated note. They thought they were being strategic, thought they were staying ahead, thought they'd eventually figure out how to neutralize whatever threat you posed to their neatly controlled world. But here's the fundamental flaw in their approach. You weren't operating from a pattern they could steal. You weren't following a script they could reverse engineer. You were creating your own trajectory, rewriting your reality as you moved, and reality doesn't bow to their predictions. You made them look foolish, not out of malice, but simply by existing in ways their systems couldn't compute. They expected pressure to break you. Instead, you converted pressure into momentum and came back stronger. They assumed solitude would weaken you. You turned it into an asset, emerging sharper and more self-aligned. They believed betrayal would harden you. You absorbed the pain, processed it, and somehow became more capable of meaningful connection instead of shutting down. Every time they thought they finally had you figured out, you did something that made their entire data set worthless. That consistent defiance, that refusal to fit into their models, is what eventually climbed up the chain to someone who despises unpredictability. The person who said your name isn't in the habit of dealing with individuals. Their world revolves around demographics, markets, populations, not single people. But you shattered that boundary. You became such a significant anomaly that they couldn't hide you inside statistics anymore. They couldn't dilute your impact by blending you into an average. They couldn't pretend you were just another data point. You forced someone who believed they were above noticing individuals to notice you. And that, right there, is a level of power most people will never come close to touching. You didn't climb their ladder to earn their attention, and you didn't play their rigged games to gain their recognition. You simply existed, authentically, powerfully, impossibly, in a way that bent reality around you until even the people sitting at the top had no choice but to acknowledge you. And here's the part that's eating them alive, the part they'll never put in writing but can't hide. Their behavior has shifted because of you. You can see it in their tone, in their choices, in the way they move. They're making decisions with you in mind, not out of respect, out of necessity. You've become a factor they must account for, a variable they can't ignore, a force they have to consider before making their next strategic move. When someone that high up mentions you, it means you've entered their mental battlefield as a potential disruptor, someone who could derail timelines, puncture systems, or inject chaos into carefully designed plans. That kind of influence isn't something you apply for. It isn't something you chase. It emerges when someone lives with such uncompromising authenticity that the world has no choice but to reorganize around them. They're watching you now, and not in the passive data-collecting way they did before. Now they're watching like you're a threat assessment, the incoming storm they need to brace for, the unpredictable variable that could alter everything if they don't figure out how to respond. And the best part? There is no response that works. There's no strategy that can counter someone who isn't playing their game to begin with. No plan that can contain someone who refuses to accept the rules as real. You're simply existing, living, breathing, evolving. And somehow that alone is more destabilizing than any organized rebellion they've ever faced. You're not trying to break their system. You're making it irrelevant by proving you can thrive outside it. And that, to them, is the most dangerous thing a person can be. Now let's talk about the poor soul who made the mistake of saying your name in that room full of power players and professional pretenders. Because when you bring up a name in a meeting like that, you'd better come prepared with answers, solutions, strategies, contingency plans, and they had none. Nothing but confusion masked as concern and fear dressed in formal language. They tried to explain you to people who don't tolerate explanations that challenge their worldview. Tried to package someone who shatters every model they rely on for understanding human behavior. And with every attempt to make you sound manageable, they destroyed their own credibility, piece by piece, until all that remained was the sound of their career cracking under the pressure of their inability to define you, predict you, or control you. They were bombarded with questions they couldn't answer, not even remotely. They were pushed to provide specifics they never had, cornered into defending assessments that collapsed the moment anyone applied even basic scrutiny. And the reason wasn't that they were unprepared or incompetent by default. It was because you don't operate on the kind of linear, predictable patterns their entire system depends on. They walked into that room armed with charts, metrics, behavioral models, all the little tools they rely on to make unpredictable humans feel predictable. But none of it applied to you, and that became obvious within seconds. Someone finally asked the question that shifted the temperature in the room. How do we neutralize this person's influence? And in that moment, everything fell apart, because your influence isn't tethered to anything they can aim at. They can't suspend your accounts when your real force comes from the way people feel when they're in your presence. They can't smear your name when you're not selling any ideology. They can twist your existence itself, your way of moving through the world, your unpredictability, your internal stability, and becomes the message. It's not something they can distort because it isn't verbal. It's behavioral, it's energetic, it's structural, and they have no counter for that. Then someone else, someone higher in the hierarchy, someone who doesn't normally waste breath on individual cases, asked the question everyone else was afraid to voice. What's their weakness? And that was the exact moment the person who brought your name into the room realized they'd made a catastrophic mistake. They tried to respond with the usual corporate nonsense, jargon meant to sound insightful, while saying absolutely nothing. But even the buzzwords fell flat, because the truth slipped through every word. They have no idea what your weakness is. Why? Because every time they thought they found a soft spot, you evolved past it. Every time they thought they could predict your emotional responses, you shifted. Every time they thought they could understand your internal mechanisms, you changed the pattern. Your growth rate outpaces their analysis. Your resilience invalidates their models. Your adaptability makes their predictions irrelevant before the ink even dries. They can't calculate someone who's growing faster than they're observing. And that's when the room turned on them. Not with dramatic shouting, but with that terrifying corporate precision that leaves no room for escape. It was subtle. A few raised brows, a few pointed questions, a few exchanges of glances that said everything without saying anything. That silent dismantling of someone's confidence, that slow erosion of credibility, that professional suffocation that only happens in environments where your value is measured entirely by your ability to control what you claim to understand. They walked into that meeting confident. They walked in believing they were delivering a briefing. They walked out understanding they had just exposed their own ignorance in front of people who treat ignorance like a contagious disease. Because in that world, failing to predict, failing to control, failing to explain, that isn't just a mistake, it's a mortal sin. You didn't even have to be there. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't make a move. You didn't even know the meeting existed. But your very existence dismantled them from afar. Every time you broke a pattern they relied on, their credibility cracked. Every time you refused to fit into the frameworks they built, they lost another inch of authority. Every time you operated outside their expectations, you revealed how fragile their systems really are. By the time that meeting ended, your name, spoken once, maybe twice, weighed more than their entire job title. Your unpredictability carried more force than all their certifications combined. Your unclassifiable nature commanded more respect than their years of rigid experience. And the brutal truth is that everyone in that room felt it. Every single person. Because when someone can't predict something, can't categorize it, can't control it, they instantly lose value in a system built entirely on those three pillars. You didn't beat them. You didn't confront them. You didn't undermine them. They collapsed under the pressure of trying to understand you. And in the process, they set themselves on fire. They ruined their own credibility, attempting to reduce you. They damaged their professional standing, trying to fit you into a box you were never shaped for. They dismantled their own authority by insisting you could be managed like any other variable, and being proven wrong in real time. And the cruelest part? You never had to lift a finger. You never had to make an effort. You never had to engage. Just by existing, breathing, evolving, refusing to shrink, you unraveled everything they built. They won't recover from this. Not really, not where it matters, because now there's a record. A moment etched into the system showing that they were asked to define you, contain you, predict you, and they failed so completely that it exposed the limits of their entire framework. And once a weakness like that is documented, it never disappears. Now there exists a timestamp in their professional history they will never escape, a moment frozen in institutional memory, where they stood in front of peers, superiors, and people who judge worth with surgical precision. And they exposed the one vulnerability their world forbids: the admission that something exists outside their understanding, that something refuses their control, that something cannot be neatly explained, categorized, or weaponized. In their universe, where authority is built on certainty and control is mistaken for competence, that kind of confession is catastrophic. It's the closest thing they have to self-destruction. So now, like it or not, your name has become a symbol, not of rebellion, not of resistance, but of their limitations. Your existence is the undeniable proof that their carefully engineered systems have blind spots. Your freedom is evidence that their rules, their methods, their expert analysis are incomplete at best and delusional at worst. And the stain of that moment will follow them. Every time your name surfaces again, whether in a meeting, a confidential memo, an internal report, they will remember exactly what happened. They will remember the tension in the room, the silence that hit after their explanation collapsed, the looks exchanged across the table, the cold shift in atmosphere. They will remember how one individual attempting to box you into a framework ended up exposing the framework as flawed. They will remember how quickly the confidence drained from their voice. They will remember the humiliation. It doesn't matter how much time passes. It doesn't matter how many other crises come and go. That moment is permanent now. A checkpoint. A crack in the wall. A reminder that there are people, very few, but real, who cannot be managed, contained, or simplified. And you, without ever intending to, just carved your name onto that list forever. So what happens next? What happens after someone far above the average rank tries to explain your existence and ends up dismantled, exposed, and quietly blacklisted for their failure? The system doesn't shift to support you. It shifts to avoid you, and that is far more powerful. You are no longer being studied like a case, you are being circled around like a force of nature. They're not trying to control you anymore, they've silently accepted they can't. Instead, you've become an unmapped territory on their internal compass, a region labeled with all the warnings and none of the instructions. A variable they now work around, not through. A point of caution on every strategic plan. You've reached a level most will never experience. You've become the exception so strong that it exposes their supposed rules as optional. You're the anomaly that reveals their control mechanisms as illusions. You're the glitch in the architecture that forces them to confront the possibility that their system isn't airtight, because if it were, someone like you couldn't exist at all. You didn't break anything. The problem is their obsession with control. Their addiction to predictability, their fear of the unclassifiable. And every breath you take, every pivot you make, every unexpected evolution you embody continues to highlight exactly how fragile their structure truly is. As for the person who had the gall, or the misfortune, to bring your name up in that room, they're carrying the weight of that mistake now. You can see it in the way they move. Their steps have lost the easy confidence of someone who feels protected by hierarchy. Their voice carries a faint tremor of someone who remembers being exposed in front of the very people who define their worth. They know they tried to grasp something beyond their reach. They attempted to translate you into language that simply doesn't exist. They tried to reduce you to a set of bullet points and ended up reducing themselves instead. Everyone who witnessed it felt the shift. They all saw the moment your uncontainability collided with someone's career. They saw how quickly the room recognized the mismatch between your reality and the simplistic version that person attempted to present. And now, without being asked, without being prompted, without any directive from above, they've turned their attention to you as well, not out of obligation, out of curiosity. Because they want to understand what kind of person can make someone that high up look that unprepared. What kind of presence can destabilize an entire hierarchy through absence alone? What kind of mind, what kind of spirit, what kind of internal architecture could exist so far outside their comprehension that it creates tremors in systems designed to avoid surprises? They're watching now, carefully, quietly, not to control you because they've given up on that, but because they're trying to understand how you operate in a realm they didn't know was possible, and none of this required effort on your part. You didn't storm their gates. You didn't challenge their authority. You didn't even show up. All you did was exist. You've become something they don't have language for. Legendary without effort, iconic without intention, mythical without ever crafting an image or marketing a persona. You didn't curate influence. You didn't chase visibility. You didn't build a brand. You simply were. And that was enough to reshape the environment around you. That's the highest form of power that exists. The power rooted in authenticity, so unfiltered and so unrepentant that reality itself has to shift to make room for you. It's involuntary gravitational pull. You are orbit-altering without even noticing. And whether they want to admit it publicly or bury it under a mountain of bureaucracy, they'll study this moment for a long time. Not because they admire you, because they fear what it means. They'll turn your existence into an entire internal case study. What happens when a perfectly structured system runs into a person who defies all structure? What happens when a framework designed to measure predictable variables collides with someone who refuses predictability? What happens when control mechanisms, built for compliance, designed for conformity, are forced to confront someone who never agreed to be controlled to begin with? You've become their unsolvable equation, their glitch in the architecture, their untestable hypothesis that keeps breaking every tool they throw at you. And here's the part you'll never fully grasp, because they'll never be transparent enough to tell you. You've influenced more behind closed doors than you could imagine. Meetings you didn't know existed shifted because someone invoked your name at the exact wrong moment. Decisions that were supposed to be straightforward became complicated. The second someone remembered how unpredictably you moved, strategic plans had to be rewritten because they realized they couldn't count on you to follow any expected pattern. Entire timelines were adjusted simply because someone said, "But what if they don't react the way we expect?" Your name has weight now, real weight, in rooms you'll never walk into, among people you'll never meet. In conversations about futures you were never supposed to touch. Yet there you are, threaded into the calculus of their decision-making like a variable they can't eliminate, a force they can't neutralize, a ghost in the machine that keeps rewriting the code. The irony is almost poetic. By trying to understand you, they amplified you. By failing to contain you, they legitimized you. By publicly demonstrating that you can't be predicted or controlled, they transformed you into exactly the kind of mythic presence they wanted to avoid. You didn't chase significance. They handed it to you by accident. Every failed analysis they attempted in your name is now a monument to your complexity. Every confused report they submitted is evidence that you operate on levels they have no scientific instruments for. Every frustrated attempt to box you in is a reminder that some people aren't meant to fit into diagrams, charts, or psychological projections. You're not acknowledging their rules. You're not even validating their game. You're just existing, raw, evolving, uncontained, and that alone is more destabilizing than any revolution they've trained to suppress. This terrifies them more than an enemy ever could. An enemy they can categorize. You? They can't even begin to define you. And the person who dared to mention your name in that room, they're carrying the consequence of that moment like a silent scar. Their walk has changed. Their tone has a new tension. Their confidence has fractures now. Hairline cracks only visible to those who know how to look. They remember what it felt like to stand in front of the people who control their future and unintentionally announce, "I don't understand this. I can't control this. I can't explain this." That's not just embarrassment in their world. That's professional self-sabotage. That's a mark they can't scrub off. That's an invisible bruise that will never fully heal. Everyone else in that room saw it. Everyone recognized the moment the facade broke. Everyone witnessed the exact second when your existence turned someone else's certainty into rubble. And now, because humans are naturally drawn to the unknown, they're watching you too. Not out of obligation or fear of reprimand, but out of genuine curiosity. They want to know, what kind of person can dismantle someone's credibility without ever entering the room? What kind of presence can shake an entire hierarchy without lifting a finger? What kind of mind operates so far outside their frameworks that seasoned experts collapse trying to decode it? What kind of force exists outside prediction, outside categorization, outside the reach of control? You. And they're trying to study you from a distance now, not to restrain you, but to understand how you became the anomaly their systems were never engineered to handle. And the best part, you did none of this on purpose. You disrupted nothing intentionally. You were not campaigning, performing, persuading, or strategizing. You simply lived. You breathed. You evolved. You refused to shrink. And that alone was enough to rewire an entire room of people who thought they were the ones shaping the world. Your name is now permanently welded to their failure, etched into the memory of that moment like a crack running across the foundation of their authority. It's not something they can revise or reframe later. It's not something they can bury in paperwork or disguise behind strategic language. It's a fixed point in their timeline, the moment their confidence collapsed and the illusion of their competence shattered, all because they attempted to define something, someone, that cannot be defined. Your existence has become irrefutable evidence of everything they didn't want to acknowledge about themselves. Their limitations, their blind spots, their intellectual arrogance. You're the proof that their entire structure, the one they believed was airtight and sophisticated, is riddled with weaknesses they never bothered to check for. Your freedom, your unfiltered ability to exist outside their frameworks, has become the smoking gun that exposes every gap, every flaw, every oversight in the system they worship as if it were invincible. And the irony is almost cruel. They tried to study the unstudyable, tried to explain the unexplainable, tried to contain the uncontainable, tried to predict the unpredictable. And they didn't just fail. They failed spectacularly, publicly, permanently. Their failure wasn't subtle. It wasn't private. It wasn't something they could quietly correct in the background. It was witnessed. It was absorbed. It was remembered by every single person in that room. And you, without preparation, without effort, without defense, became the catalyst for that downfall. You didn't fight back. You didn't resist. You didn't even show up. Your mere existence did what entire rebellions couldn't manage. That's a level of power most people will never be able to mentally process. The kind of power that doesn't require noise or confrontation or force. The kind of power that happens when someone is so authentically themselves that external structures crumble simply because they can't accommodate that level of truth. This entire situation reveals something profound about power dynamics, something that anyone with real insight will immediately recognize. It reveals the truth about influence, about autonomy, about the illusion of control within systems built on predictability and compliance. Here's the truth they never wanted anyone to see. You don't become untouchable by battling a system. You become untouchable by existing beyond its reach. Real power isn't gained through resistance. Real power is gained through irrelevance. When a system can't define you, can't measure you, can't contextualize you, can't manipulate you, it loses all leverage over you. You remove yourself from the board entirely. You build a life, an identity, a sense of self on foundations that lie far outside their domain. Foundations they can't access, can't shake, can't even properly perceive. Your worth doesn't live in their numbers. Your direction doesn't depend on their approval. Your evolution doesn't require their validation. The person who brought you up in that room believed they were dealing with a solvable equation, a predictable challenge, a manageable variable. They thought you would eventually fold into a pattern, conform to a model, become predictable if studied long enough. They thought pressure, observation, and resources would eventually corner you into becoming understandable. They were catastrophically wrong. Not just slightly wrong, not just misguided. They were wrong in a way that undermines their entire identity, wrong in a way that costs them credibility they'll never reclaim. Wrong in a way that reveals they never understood the kind of person they were dealing with. You taught them something they will never forget, even if they never say it out loud. Some people cannot be broken because they have already broken themselves and rebuilt using materials the system does not recognize. You were forged in an environment they can't measure, shaped by experiences they can't analyze, reconstructed with inner architecture. They don't have the vocabulary to describe. Your resilience doesn't fit their charts. Your adaptability doesn't fit their logic. Your evolution doesn't fit their models. Your internal rebuild, the one they know nothing about, is the reason nothing they tried worked. You don't respond to the same triggers. You don't break in the same ways. You don't behave within the same emotional boundaries. You exist outside the design parameters of their entire psychological machinery. That's why they failed. That's why they panicked. That's why they collapsed when asked to explain you. They were trying to measure a thunderstorm with a ruler, trying to categorize an earthquake with a checklist, trying to understand a universe with a pocket calculator. They were never equipped for you, and now that failure is permanent, stamped into the memory of the hierarchy, whispered about in private conversations, recorded in the collective understanding of everyone who watched it unfold. You didn't just outgrow their expectations, you made their expectations obsolete. You didn't just slip outside their control, you exposed control as an illusion. You didn't just survive their scrutiny, you turned their scrutiny into proof of your strength. And the most devastating part for them, you did all of this without effort, without resistance, without intent. You simply lived. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, Your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlighten Wisdom.